And of course, those guys were a little bit, we always wonder what's in it for us, okay? And by the way, I can tell you ladies how to own your man. I told my wife this a long time ago, honey, you give me two things and you own me. You give me affection, just give me hugs, just give me affection, I like affection, and give me affirmation. Tell me you believe in me. And you own me. Because we live in a world where not only not very affection, there's not a lot of sincere, honest affection for people. There's hardly any affirmation. We live in a world that's always kicking to the curb. You give me those two things, honey, you'll own me. But I also found out, by the way, when I did a good job of listening to my wife and really listened to her heart, that it made her kind of frisky. So, it's a good thing, guys. So listen to your wife, okay? Is that okay? Is that all right? Get that? So anyway, sometimes I have passions, so I can't believe he said that. But frisky's all right, isn't it? All right. I'm going to talk about my final point, and that is the outdoors is one of the most intense spiritual experiences of my life. I love the outdoors because me and God, it's me and God. I'm just spending time with God. You know what I find out? When I'm in the outdoors, I don't know, when I'm just so busy, caught up doing all these things, me and God don't have a lot of time. And I'm outdoors, and I look around. First of all, it dawns on me. When you're outdoors, you're canoeing down a river, or you're out on a lake, or you're out in the woods, or you're out in the mountains. Look around. Doesn't it dawn on you? There has to be a God. There has to be a God. I look around, and isn't it irrational to think something blew up by some freak of nature? We're here by happenstance? Really? I'm sorry, our universities teach evolution. From my simple-minded perspective, that's the most irrational thought there can be. It's like saying, my watch evolved over millions of years and I picked it up off the beach. Because our world, its complexity and the magnificence of it, tells me there has to be a God. There has to be a God. To think that we're here by some freak or millions and millions of years of evolving. I know a few friends of mine, they look like they evolved from something. I don't know what it was, but I'm not trying to be crass. There has to be a God, don't you think? In fact, Romans 1:20 says, since the beginning of creation, that God's majesty and his power has been clearly revealed by what has been made, so that men are without excuse. I think when you go outdoors, I think you're without excuse. You have to be able to see the hand of an Almighty God. Don't you think so? And let me tell you about one other verse that is very meaningful to me. Psalms 42 says, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. My soul longs for the living God. Where can I go and meet with him? And one of those places for me. I love church. I love hanging out with other believers. I like buddies that we go riding Harleys. And by the way, just because you give your life to Jesus doesn't mean you have to ride a Honda. Right, brother? I got my Harley shirt under here. I do. I showed some other guys. You can still ride a Harley. You don't have to leave your manliness at the door. Let me tell you something. I know a lot of men who think Christianity is for women and children. It's absolutely the opposite. You're a girly man until you know Jesus. You'll never be the man you're capable of being until you make Jesus the center of your life. Just so like a deer needs water, you need Jesus. And that's what I found. Let me tell you the story of Matthew's archery. We grew up making bow and arrows since high school. We'd start making recurves. I wanted to make bows because I wanted to hunt with them. My brother wanted to make bows because he liked making bows. And so ever since we were in high school, we were making bows. I made them because I wanted to hunt. My brother just liked making bows. The problem is he never grew up. He kept wanting to make bows. And I got on with my life. Started companies and everything. And I said, I remember praying, Lord, would you help my brother? He's such a dreamer. And he's a wonderful man. I love him. He's just 1 year younger than me. Except that he has a full head of hair. And he can sing like unbelievable. And but anyway, other than that, I love him. But he kept trying to make bow and arrows. And he kept trying to make bow and arrows. And I just said, Lord, Matt, do you want to come to work with me? No, I want to, I said, oh, well, Matt, sometimes you just got to get a job. He said, well, I'm not there yet. Not that he didn't have jobs. He had some jobs, but he just had this vision. And he said, I feel like God's called me to make bow and arrows. Not because I loved it. I like to hunt and all that stuff, but I feel like God's called me to make bow and arrows because Randy, I want to help people. You see, we grew up in a very poor family. Tim, you still have the house we grew up in. Very old farmhouse in Edina, Minnesota, which is a rich man's community. Very poor, but a rich man's community. My mom there wants to have friends over to see how poor we live. He says, I just want to help people. Finally, he prayed. He said, God, I don't want to make the best bows. And my brother, by the way, is not good in the classroom setting either. In fact, when he graduated from high school, which in itself was a miracle, he said, that's the last day he spent in a classroom. Now, my brother's been tested. He is a genius. He is a genius. But some people just aren't a genius in a classroom. And people keep asking where he got his engineering degree. And he says, well, God helps me. But anyway, here's the story. He said, God, I don't know how to make bows. But I know you do. Would you mind telling me? He says, man, I do not make the best bows. In fact, I know all the answers to questions that people would ever ask. But nobody ever asked me. And people would just ask me. And if they need to know, I'm going to make sure they know it. Oh! And so finally, my brother prayed that prayer, and he started waking up with dreams in the middle of the night of bow and arrows. And he'd write those things down, and they became patents. My brother's been elected to the Archer Hall of Fame because of all the patents and all the ideas that he's gotten. To this day, he still wakes up with dreams in the middle of the night. And what you don't know is that you cannot buy a Matthews bow without helping somebody hurting in the world. He gives away millions of dollars. In fact, just recently he borrowed money again to give it away. I said, man, I don't know if that's a good idea. He says, well, the need's so great and so immediate, I'll just make it up. He has the mission line, which is the medium price bow line. Every bit of profit goes to missions. That's why it's called mission archery. Every bit of profit. With that archery line alone, he supports over 1,000 missionaries. And then all the licensed products, all the accessories, the hats, the clothing that he allows to license, all the profits from that go to help hurting people. Puts wells in third world countries. He supports things like breast cancer. He's always doing things to help. He supports Center Shot alone by over $30,000 a month. Otherwise, that ministry wouldn't be around. So I really believe that the reason why God blesses him is because it's not about him. My brother's focused on helping others. And let me tell you, I went to God a few years ago and I said, God, I'm a bow hunter in the family. Would you mind telling me how to make bows? And you know what he said? He said, get over it, chum. He says, I got other ideas for you. I have other plans. And in my own life, by the way, over the last 25, 30 years, the businesses I've started and built have done hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's amazing for a guy who just has 2 years of college. And we come from a long line of generations of people who have never been successful in business. So what I found is that when you make Jesus Christ the center and the target of your life, miraculous things happen. Unbelievable things happen. So the reason I'm here tonight, I was in Sheldon, no, I was in Goodwin's Track, I was in Pella last night in Iowa. The reason I do this, I was recently in Alaska, and I have my companies and my jobs on weekends during this time of year I travel. Because what God has done in my own life is so powerful, so impactful, that I found that just like a deer needs water, I need Jesus. I come from a long line of generations of alcoholics on my dad's side. And without God, I would be a train wreck too. But not only does he keep me from being a train wreck, but he helps me too, but I can't do it on my own. That's the kind of God we have. The God who made the world out there that we enjoy, the fishing, the hunting, the camping, is the same God. You know, the biggest leap of faith for me is not that there's a God who made all this. That's not, to me, that's an irrational thought to think that somehow, by some freak of nature, we're all here, that there's no divine being that created this world. I don't understand a lot of things, but I understand there has to be a God. But the biggest leap of faith is the God who made all that wants to know me personally and wants to have a personal relationship with me through Jesus Christ. And that's the step. But every day I take that step. And I'm so glad I do. So here's what I'd like to do. My brother wrote a poem several years ago called The Salvation Poem. You should have got this when they handed out your deal. It's been recorded in many, many languages all over the world. And maybe a lot of us have heard this, a prayer like this, and you had people try to make you pray a prayer like this before. It's really not the words, but it's the heart. You see, God judges our heart. And so when you say these words, and you pray this prayer from your heart, then God honors that. And here's what this poem says. It says simply, Jesus, you died upon a cross and rose again to save the lost. Forgive me now of all my sin. Come be my Savior, Lord and friend. Change my life and make it new. And help me, Lord, to live for you. So here's what I'd like to do. I would like to ask all of you to just join me in saying that poem tonight, this prayer, as a prayer. If you've never prayed a prayer like this, let tonight be the night that you mean it. And you say it, and you let Jesus come and be the center of the part of your life. If you've prayed this prayer before and you're going to follow Christ, but you've fallen away, and you got caught up with the details and the grind, and your mind is playing tricks on you about, well, this God thing and this Jesus thing, and is it real? There's a step of faith. And as I've told my own son, who's in philosophy, I said, at some point your mind cannot totally comprehend God, and that's why they call it the leap of faith. Take that step tonight and get back right with God. So here's what I'd like to do. I'll say a line, and would you simply just repeat it and mean it. Let's bow our heads. And you can open your eyes to read it, but and I promise nobody will get hurt.